only way I can start this episode. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Corey.
And today we are going to be discussing Warren Zevon's Excitable Boy, which features the song I referenced in the intro, the immortal Werewolves of London. But there's a lot more to it, actually. He's not just some mere one-hit wonder like you might think. He's got a crazy story all his own and a wide influence, which is part of why he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. And not as a performer, but as a musical influence, which he definitely is. And that gives us the perfect opportunity to dive into one of the albums of Mr. Warren Zevon. And here we are with Excitable Boy from 1978.
Yeah, man. I think he's one of the ones on the list this year that a lot of people don't know about. And then also one that is a little bit of a head scratcher for a lot of people. A very interesting man, to say the least. But definitely one that I had to really go back. It was a cool time for me to talk to some older heads, like including my dad, and just be like, hey, what's the deal with this guy? And there's some wildness. There's some wildness.
Oh, there definitely is. And gave me a chance to read a book I'd heard a lot about, but didn't get a chance to read. And it's not just about Warren Zevon. It features a lot of other famous names. It's called I'll Sleep When I'm Dead, The Dirty Life and Times of Warren Zevon. The author is listed as his longtime wife, Crystal Zevon. But it's an oral history that also contains diary entries from Warren Zevon, and it's used to tell his story. It serves as a biography, memoir of sorts, and narratively, it's not the easiest to read because it's a mix of interview and diary entry, but it's got a lot of fascinating tidbits in it. And in all honesty, didn't always make its subject look good. Some of these stories were a little too crazy. Like, this guy was really weirdly obsessed with guns, uh, which I found very strange for a musician to be so obsessed with guns.
Yeah. Especially in the time period that he lived. Just some macabre undertones. I don't even say undertones. He's
No.
just some out there opinions and ways of life, I mean, it was a different time, but it still was a little heavy for someone in this day and age to read about.
Yeah, but I think he was macabre even in comparison to his contemporaries, some of whom made appearances on this album.
That was a fun fantasy there, like reading through the list of artists that are on this album and being like, what's this party like? Like what?
Yeah.
Is this the guy that throws the party and everybody's there and they're like, yeah, we're here, but Warren's a little out there? I would have to think so. Even for Buckingham and them, I would think that he was a little heavy for everybody. Just from what I can gather.
I would agree with that. But that's one of the reasons that I actually picked this album, is because of all of the guest stars, and this is part of that good old California scene of the 1970s, which just had such a sense of community. And by this point in time, that sound had gotten more mainstream and distanced from its early roots from the beginning of the decade with your Joni Mitchell and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. It had evolved, but the camaraderie was still there, and it's just, you see it on the list of credits on this album, which we'll get into track by track. But most notably, the album was produced by Jackson Browne, and
Yeah.
this was released only 1 month after he put out Running on Empty. So,
Uh,
what a time.
yeah,
And this is Warren Zevon's third studio album. He had put out 2 before it, and the first one went nowhere. He didn't do anything for a while, but his self-titled album was released a couple years prior in 1976, and it wasn't a huge commercial hit. It just barely scraped the Billboard 200, but his writing got a lot of attention, and 4 of the songs on it were covered by Linda Ronstadt, who was at her height of popularity at this point in time, and she made his song Poor, Poor, Pitiful Me a top 40 hit during this era. So, really, this 77, 78 period was the ideal time for Warren Zevon to make a commercial breakthrough, strike while the iron was hot. And he had the support of some big names to do it. And it did work for him.
yeah, yeah. It worked for him. I mean, this was a legitimate hit from what I can surmise, from what I can gather, and I don't know. I mean, of course it wouldn't hit the same today, but it's just wild that it was a hit. I'm trying so bad not to go into my notes for the tracks because I feel like I enjoy my notes for these tracks, but there's so much about this album that doesn't scream hit, and it more so screams, in my opinion, a cult classic. And from what I can gather, it wasn't a cult classic. It might be now, but it wasn't when it was released.
No, this was a top 10 album, top 100 for the year of 1978, and it's certified platinum. And the rest of Zevon's albums could be classified as cult classics. None of his other albums went platinum,
Or
but this one did. And a lot of it was on the strength of one hit, which, well, we'll get into that hit. And even then, what a bonkers song to have been a hit. Well, it's
yeah.
a hit today still, but a bonkers song to have been a hit in 1978 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know what song you're talking about, but this album was released in January, so it was the way that I've consumed the song that we're talking about is inside of a holiday sense, and to see it be a single in the top 40 outside of that said holiday is wild to me. It really is. Again, different time, and we're inside. You were just talking about it, but we're inside of that California scene. We're inside of that really storyteller, singer-songwriter, era, and I understand it, but when I see Jackson Browne's name standing alongside Warren Zevon's name, with production credits, after I do all my research, I say, "Really? That's who Jackson Browne's hanging with?" It's a very conflicting, stance there, I would think.
I would agree, and I would note that Jackson Browne didn't produce any albums for Warren Zevon after this one, and he didn't have as many hits, and that might have something to do with it because at this point in time, especially, Jackson Browne knew how to make a hit.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Zevon, maybe it's a hot tea take, but Zevon hits for me like a darker Harry Nielsen, especially on this album. You know what I'm saying? Like uh, real snapshot songs about certain events, but very, very dark in that sense. But he hits like a Nielsen to me.
I can see where you're coming from, and this is a few years from Nielsen's peak,
Yeah.
but yeah, I would say darker than most artists we've covered on the show, actually.
Yeah, that's wild because we've we've covered some heavy heads, but there's the juxtaposition between, and we're already diving into the album without diving into the album, but just the contrast of lyrics and deep meaning to the musical composition is a reason to listen to this album.
Yes, and it certainly played a big part into his induction, and he notably got inducted by David Letterman, which was fitting because Letterman was a longtime fan and friend of Warren Zevon's, and that's something else I would note. If you were to have known David Letterman from the present day or even just the past 20 or so years, you probably wouldn't picture him as liking this kind of music. But if you're familiar with Letterman's earlier work, which was much more off the wall and aggressive, after all, Cher once flat out called him an asshole because of his style in his early years. With that David Letterman, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I say Jackson Brown, like, wow, is he hanging out with Zevon? But I it's not really a stretch for me knowing Letterman that he would be or have Zevon in his camp or be in the Zevon camp, or merge those camps. I could see that. I could see that. Letterman is a very, very interesting man, to say the least. Almost in the same sense I said it about Zevon coming into the podcast today. Some unexpected things, from both artists.
Yeah, yeah, but Letterman, it was on Letterman's show that Warren Zevon made his final public appearance, and he knew it would be because he had terminal cancer. But yeah, Letterman was a perfect choice to induct him, I believe. And we'll talk about the musical tribute because when we get to the specific song, because it's a song from this album and it's not the big hit, actually. It's the second most well known song that was done. But I guess that's to show the influence. And I do want to make one more note about the making of this album, which is that the album cover is so heavily retouched. In the book I read, somebody even quoted like Warren was made to almost look like he was 12, and he was much older. He was a like 30-year-old man and who had kids and the wife.
Yeah, he almost looks like a young, Elton John on this cover, you know? Like, it's a baby-faced cover for such a, non-baby-faced kinda dude from what I gather.
Yeah, he's he's an excitable boy if you can't tell from the cover,
Phew.
but maybe not in the way you might expect. So, with that being said, I'm ready to dive into this track by track.
Yeah, let's get at it.
So, Excitable Boy begins with Johnny Strikes Up the Band. This song was singled out by Waddy Wachtel, the guitarist and co producer of this album, as a favorite. Easy to see why. According to Genius, the Johnny in this song is Johnny Carson, uh, the late night icon for sure. Um, and that does tie this song to its era,
Yeah.
but it's not so overt that the song isn't enjoyable today. Like, you can enjoy the song without the context. It works fine as a pop song, and it's an accessible opener.
It is, and I think that's key. I think that's key to really, concentrate on is that it is a very accessible opener, for this album, in its entirety. It not only is accessible in the manner of the lightness of it, on the surface level, but it's also accessible because the musicality is really spot on even here in the first track. It doesn't alienate anyone, and it lets us know where we are. Um, I can't speak for listeners, when it first came out. Unfortunately, I wasn't around, but I can only imagine that this might have even come off as a little bit of a fluff piece if you know who Warren Zevon is before you listen to it. But that accessibility is key because in my opinion, if some of these other tracks would have been the opener, it might have been an album that you might have turned off. So I think it's important that Johnny Strikes Up the Band is the lead song here, and it sets up a an accessible first track. I'm dancing around so much talking about this album without spoilers, but yeah, it's a neat first track, and there's some cool guitar work inside of it. It really does. It works as a song still to this day without context, and it does its job in the first spot.
Yes. And it's got a piano line that really drives it too. It
Yeah,
also adds to that accessibility, but we are dancing around a lot, and that's because we have songs with titles like this next one, Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner.
yeah.
So this song dates back to 1974. It was co-written with David Lindell, and it is actually based on Lindell's experiences as a mercenary in Africa. And in case you don't know what a mercenary is, it's basically a paid military person who's only doing it for the profit, not for a country, no separate interest side of that. And as a result, this character of Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner is created, and he's headless because his head gets shot off, but well, he gets his revenge by haunting the guy who did it. So it's a story that needs to be heard to be believed. My description doesn't do it justice. This one was one of David Letterman's favorites. It was actually the final song that Zevon played for an audience during his famous final appearance on Letterman's show.
And which is wild because at first listen, it didn't strike me as a song that stood the test of time and had so many hardcore fans for it. Um, because it sits on top of almost like a shanty type run here, and an old war story slash I dare say pirate shanty, but it really or more like an Irish shanty. Regardless, it doesn't lend itself as a pop song, period. It almost reminds me of some like Jethro Tull, Tales from the Wood type of real out there um orchestration and composition. It's a straightforward story here, and I guess it's only unexpected to me as a first time listener on here. This was a grower. This was a grower because at first it almost was a skipper for me. I'm not saying it's my favorite song on the album by far, but it's not a bad song. It's just a song from a different time period where this in my opinion, or from what I think, this type of song could still be relevant and doesn't throw the listener. Like for me, not to beat a dead horse, but first listen, this took me right out of the album. Like whoa, 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 coming right out of Johnny Strikes Up the Band. It was a huge contrast. Um, It does its job. It does its job. It's the least tongue-in-cheek alliteration, I think, throughout the whole entire album. It's a very straightforward story. Um, I don't wanna say anything bad about it because I don't think it's bad, but it's just a weird place. Like, we talked about the accessibility of song 1. If this album opened up with Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner, I feel like the listening is in a different, standpoint. Like you're not on the same level as you were coming out of Johnny Strikes Up the band as the first. So as far as pacing goes, it doesn't kill the album, but it just was unexpected to say the least.
Yes, and I'm glad you made the comment about the it sounded like a shanty, because if this actually reminds me of any song, maybe it's because of how he sings it. The vocal melody reminds me a bit of The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald by Gordon Lightfoot.
100%, 100%.
But
It really
that song
does.
was a huge hit.
Heard. That's what I'm saying, different time, as far as first listener.
Yes, and oh, if you thought that one was weird though, you we've got another bizarre. We've got the most bizarre one coming up. I'm gonna tell you now. It's the title track, "Excitable Boy." This one was co-written with Leroy Marinell, and it's got a very upbeat arrangement and doo-wop style backing vocals from Jennifer Lawrence and Linda Ronstadt. But this song is about this boy is so excitable that he rapes and murders. So there's that. However, I think that this juxtaposition is what makes this song brilliant, because it's a truly macabre story set against this really pretty sounding song, and these just lays like, "Ooh, excitable boy," and you've gotta hear this one to believe it. Again, but this time the bizarreness and the musicality just meld together so well, and I think this is a great song.
Yeah, this song is a mind blower for me because first listen, it literally took me off my feet to the point where I was like, "Wait a minute, what did that just say?" Because the juxtaposition of the way that the musicality, the composition of the song versus what the actual lyrics are night and day. And I'm with you. That is the genius of this song. In my notes, I have Little Shop of Horror vibes because it gives me that, where we're talking about some macabre stuff, not as macabre as this, but some macabre stuff and getting a little bit of a doo-wop background with our background singers and our musicality, our composition here. But this song is wild, man. I mean, we're looking at a legitimate take on someone's opinion on the way that America was handling diagnosing mental illness. And rather than dealing with it at this time, his opinion is that, these people are just saying, oh, he's an excitable boy. We go from like these, we do this crescendo of the macabre from, being in your Sunday best to biting a lady's leg at an adult theater, which aren't things anymore. So I feel like that is a little lost on people that are listening now that don't have context. To taking a girl to junior prom. The lyrics are like killer, rape her, killer, and bring her home. And then the next one we get is like digging up her bones and putting them in a cage. And it's all over this beautifully. I mean, Linda Ronstadt singing backup to this, man. It's such a wild contrast that is the genius of this tune here. And as far as pacing goes, when we get into the next one, I think it's even more genius because it really puts the Zevon stamp on this part of the album.
Yes, because yeah, for the side one that we're on,
Yeah.
yes, and now we're on to the big one. If if there's any song it's this one, "Werewolves of London," a Halloween staple. And in the book, "I'll Sleep When I'm Dead," Waddy Wachtel said this was the hardest song that he ever had to record. He compared it to Coppola making Apocalypse Now, and that they were not able to get it right until they decided to call Mick Fleetwood and John McVie to provide their rhythm section, and voila, they finished the song. And it was noted that everyone was drunk when they did it, but that just makes sense for Werewolves of London. And yeah, this one notably, again, part of why this song was such a hit is because of the musicality. It definitely sounds a bit like Sweet Home Alabama. I'm not the first person who's ever mentioned that similarity, but it's just pristinely produced and it's got a monster, unforgettable hook with that "Ow, Werewolves of London." And that offsets the macabre verses. Because really, this song, you could argue it's a social commentary, but in the book, they kind of said it really wasn't about anything. We just kind of made it up as we went along. And either way, this one's, I mean, it's a classic for a reason. It made it to 21 on the Billboard Hot 100, but it's far outlasted that because it's still a song that everybody knows. At this point, it's a standard.
Yeah, it's a timeless tune, and before I get into my opinion of it, I just to touch on what you were talking about, it works so well because of the musicality here. Um, I can 100% see where where Wachtel was talking about how it was like Coppola, trying to put this together, especially without a rhythm section. That and the reason being that ties into my opinion of this song, and it's always been my least favorite Halloween song. And I've never really liked this song because I always felt like the lyrics, I understood how he added extra beats per se inside the measure with his lyrics and how it was supposed to be a little bit off, but it was always off-putting to me. Like he had too much to say and he couldn't put it inside of the rhythm of this tune. And that it just always rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know if I buy, and I'm glad to hear you saying that the artist said it was just a sort of put together, we did it drunk kind of song because I don't buy the social commentary part of it. I see little pieces and whatnot, but I don't really buy that as far as the commentary for the rest of this album really sticks its landing, and this one does not. Coming out of Excitable Boy, it fits musically really perfect, and I dig that. And I have a new love for it inside of this song, reading about it. Um, Pacing wise, it's right there. I feel like I'm beating that horse right now, but it's never been my favorite. It is nowhere near Skipper, but it is. I can see it as a drunken song with especially those crazy cats all in one room. And I can see where it came from. Not it doesn't take you out of the album. It definitely doesn't take you out of the album. It doesn't hit as hard as the rest of it does if you really listen to it for me. Um, it's still not my favorite, nowhere near in my top 10 for Halloween songs. Unfortunately, I have a that's my hot tea take for this one. I don't
Yeah,
like Werewolves of London.
that is a I mean, it's kinda just one of those songs that's always been there.
Heard.
So, I mean, I've always enjoyed this song. Part of why I picked the album. I've always enjoyed this song, and it's a novelty song that's got legs on it.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. So, but actually, Waddy Wachtel did note that him and Warren were very unhappy that this was chosen as a single. Uh, they wanted, they just wanted different songs they would have preferred. One of the ones that Wachtel mentioned he would have preferred as a single was Johnny Strikes Up the Band.
Heard.
And, the other one he mentioned, we will is on side 2, and we will talk about that one when we get there. That one I can see where he's coming from, but obviously time proved everyone wrong. This is an immortal song for whether you like it or not.
Yeah, yeah, it's such a weird single for outside of the holiday season, and I guess that's from what we know it as now, but it is a very curious track from a very curious artist, so I guess it
Yeah.
sticks.
I mean, record labels didn't always think seasonally back in
Or
the 20th century well, the song Thriller was
yeah,
actually not released during Halloween time as a
that's true.
single.
That is true.
So, but now we are at the end of side one with Accidentally Like a Martyr. This one features harmony vocals from Carla Bonoff. She had her hit moment a few years after this album, but she was a prolific songwriter at this time. And for once, we've got a straightforward tune. This one's a breakup song. It's pretty standard. And well, I'll say it, I think it's gorgeously produced and even sung. It's a good vocal from Zevon. And, this, musically, it's what I would expect from a Jackson Brown production in 1978.
Agreed.
And, well, I'm very happy with that because we've got him just at arguably, possibly at least the peak of his hit making powers here, producing a lovely breakup tune, which he was a master of, and but it's also got Zevon's signature wordplay in it because he's going to bring the martyr into it. But really strong ending to side one. Uh, this one is, if there is a song I'd recommend to a Brown fan, it would be this one, probably.
Yeah,
At least for
that's
on side one, it's the one I recommend a
yeah,
Jackson Brown fan seek out.
yeah, I think that's a great recommendation there. This is, in my opinion, a very much needed bookend, so to speak, or just last track on this side of the album, especially when you come out of Excitable Boy and Werewolves of London. I really enjoyed it. Um, it's neat to have the sensibility as an artist to go from tongue in cheek or in not even tongue in cheek for Excitable Boy, but like real macabre and out there lyrics, and then come here, even with his wordplay, and really give us a touching and truthful and neat breakup song here. It hits you in the feels, and it's really wild how I feel like in a lot of albums, switching gears this quickly would really take you out of the album, and it doesn't. And it has that Brown sensibility on it too, so it really softens this side of the album, and it does it in the best way. I dig that. I really like that recommendation. I second that recommendation.
Yes. Glad to hear that. Because now we gotta flip it over to side two and track six, which is Nighttime in the Switching Yard. This one we've got Leroy Marinell, Waddy Wachta, and Jorge Calderon co-writing this with Warren Zevon. And for another famous name, we've got Toto's Jeff Porcaro providing drums and percussion on this one, which is practically a disco song. Not what I was expecting from Warren Zevon, but makes sense for 1978, though. I will say I don't believe many of his contemporaries made a song as close to disco as this track. And lyrically, it's pretty slight. Mean, it works. Musically, it works. We've got some master musicians on it, not just for Toto, but those guys were really prolific session musicians. If you just look at their credits list, it's pretty insane. And it's got a good groove. It's this song is no staying alive. I'm gonna say that right now, but it works just fine for this album. It's a solid enough dance tune. Um, as close as we get. So fitting for the era, if not the artist. I don't think this plays up to his strong suits as a lyricist, certainly not, but very much of its time, and it does its job, I suppose.
Yeah, man. I mean, your whole last comment is pretty much my notes on this. It sings its era. Like it is its era. It's a really cool way to start the second side of this album too. And I dig the funk. I dig the disco of it. I really love there's a guitar and synthesizer back and forth right in the middle of this song that it's almost it's really tough to tell where the guitar stops and the synthesizer begins, and I really love that until the synthesizer really starts to sing. It's just fun. This is fun. It's a situational narrative inside of this train yard, and which is such a weird narrative for the amount of disco we get here, and this wild crescendo at like the I'd say like 3 minute and 33 second mark here. It's fun. For me, this is some guilty pleasure fun to start off the second half of this album with so many, and we still haven't seen a few of them, but so many like social commentary songs. This one just is some fun and some disco here, and I dig that. I dig that. It's wild if you think about it. Not against, but alongside Johnny Strikes Up the Band as a opener. In my opinion, both of these sides of the album have these very accessible first tracks, and it does its job on the accessibility here before we go back into some more Zevon-esque uh tracks here.
Yes, but quick correction to what I said earlier. I said I didn't believe any of Zevon's contemporaries had songs this close to disco. I lied. I just remembered that Jackson Browne has a song called Disco Apocalypse
heard,
from
heard that.
his 1980 album Holdout.
Heard that.
Yeah, not one of the Jackson Browne classic tunes, but
Heard.
that's okay. They can't all be running on empty or Doctor My Eyes. That it's okay. Um, but now we're definitely into some social commentary with track 7, which is Veracruz, co-written with Jorge Calderon and based on the U.S. occupation of Veracruz, Mexico in 1914. This is the slowest song on the album, and I'm not gonna lie, this is not a history class lesson that I'm remembering if it did come up. Like it probably did. I did take US history, but I'm not remembering it. But I know who Woodrow Wilson is. I can tell you that much. But this one really doesn't for me work without all the context. Like this is a history nerd song, I would say. It's almost academic. And I'm not against that in a pop rock album necessarily, but I don't feel that the song itself has enough going on musically to overcome that shortcoming in the lyrics, which is that this just isn't the most accessible track. It's for a specific audience. And it's a weird one to have on this relatively mainstream album. Um, this is my gun to the head. It's pleasant enough to listen to, but I don't find it all that musically remarkable.
Yeah, we're 100% together on that one. And really, I don't want to beat the same horse here, but I'll just touch on my notes as well. Is I don't know enough about this for it to really ring with me. It's very, very specific in its the way you put it, the history nerdness of it. It's super specific, and in the other places on this album, like even in Rolling the Headless, where we see something similar to this, the musicality really lifted it to the next level, and I was okay with it. This one, I mean, yeah, there's some nice stuff here. I'm not talking crap on him, but yeah, this is my gun in the head as well. It just this one takes me out. And it's wild because there's so much contrast and there's so much weird, even for a song on this album where there's so much uh out there stuff and different ways to bring it. This one fell flat. We haven't said that yet, so I'll say it. This one fell flat for me on this album.
It did a little bit, and it doesn't have the trademark darkness of the other off the wall tracks here.
Heard, heard.
So there we have it. But now this is a shorter album, only 9 tracks, so we're at the penultimate song, which is Tenderness on the Block. This one was co-written with Jackson Browne, and this is the other track that Waddy Wachtel mentioned he thought should have been a single instead of Werewolves of London, and I totally see where he's coming from with that. This has hit written all over it. I'm very surprised that this wasn't pushed as a single because it's a straightforward song about relationships and it's got a big name co-writer on it. And it works. Most importantly, it's not too flashy. It doesn't have any crazy narratives, but it's just a strong song of this era, and this is what I wanted to hear when picking this album. Um this was a really pleasant surprise so much. It's like a song I'm glad I know now. Because I really enjoyed this one a lot, and I do wish it was a hit, actually.
Yeah, this was a really cool one that I didn't know about either, and I'm glad. This is one that's made its way onto my liked playlist here on Spotify, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it. This is for me what we talked about accidentally a martyr and recommend it as a Jackson Brown lover type of deal. But this is very close to a Jackson Brown song
It
in
is.
my opinion, and I like it for that reason. It doesn't make me think like, oh, I bet you Jackson Brown wrote this, but it has that sensibility about it, and it really coming in in the penultimate track, it really brightens this album, and in such a positive way. I mean, there's great players on it, and the musicality is top notch. But we've seen that throughout this album. But there is really a brightness about this one, and it screams hit. It's so accessible. We've used that word a bunch here, but this one really is a neat one, and surprising not to see it as a single.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned the Jackson Brown connection. I mean, sonically, it probably could have fit in with Running on Empty just fine. It just didn't fit into the concept of that album, I don't
Yeah,
believe, which is
yeah,
about life on the road, but still, I'm still glad we have it.
agreed, agreed.
Now, we're at the end of the album with one of Zevon's most famous compositions, the most famous track here besides Werewolves of London, Lawyers, Guns, and Money. The title of this comes from Warren Zevon's dad, who said that if you're in trouble, send lawyers, guns, and money, which, okay, I mean, I can see where that advice comes from. And this song, according to Warren's friend Bert Stein in I'll Sleep When I'm Dead, he wrote this song on a couple of cocktail napkins, which, hey, writers gotta write. Um, and it was based on Zevon vacationing in Kauai, but this does add some Cold War overtones to it. But I don't feel that, um, again, that now historical reference really hurts the song at all. It's a strong track on its own, and it's the song that the Killers performed to honor him with at the induction ceremony, and the Killers wouldn't have been my first choice. That's I would have thought the Killers would have fit more for like a new wave type band being inducted, but they did a great job on it, and Waddy Wachtel joined them on it. So I'm glad we tied that into the making of the album because Warren Zevon couldn't be there. I definitely believe someone who worked with him should have been there to partake in the tribute, and I'm glad that somebody was, even if it was the Killers doing it. But they brought it in, and Brandon Flowers delivered on the theatricality of this song because it that is an element of it. I don't think Zevon plays it up the most, but this is a story being told here, and I mean, I think it's a solid album closer. This is a short album, I will note that, but it works just fine, and it's a winning track musically and lyrically.
Yeah, I dig it, man. I really love it as a closer. This is it's such a neat song. It doesn't I don't need to know the Cold War like you were talking about. I don't need to know the historical reference to connect with it, to get with the narrative. In fact, I like the fact that I didn't know necessarily what was going down until about the end of the narrative when it's like I always go home with I'm paraphrasing, but like I always go home with waitresses, but who knew she was in with the Russians? And this is where the call for lawyers, guns, and money comes from. And I dig that. I dig the whole way this narrative goes. There's a really upbeat feeling about this narrative, even though it's pretty chaotic and pretty desperate. But that's the contrast that we've really been uh, served here throughout this album, and I think it's a real fitting way to go out. It's a super cool closer. I dig it.
Yes, it is, and there we have it. There was an expanded edition of this album released in 2007 with some bonus tracks, but some of them are pretty unfinished, actually, and one of them's an alternate version of Werewolves of London, so I don't really feel the need to dive into them. If you're It's for the diehard Zevon heads out there, is what
Yeah.
that stuff's for, but for the rest of us, I think these 9 songs work just fine. This was a good time to dive into this album. It was a one I hadn't heard before, but was excited to take up some listens to and examine, and I'm glad that we did.
Yeah, me too. This was a neat one that we probably wouldn't have touched if it wasn't for our dive into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame stuff. So I really had a fun time with this one.
Yes, and with some fun names along the way as well,
Yeah, man.
making appearances. So, as a with all of that being said, Corey, what is your grade for the album?
Warren Zevon, Excitable Boy, such a unique album. And I this one took a lot of listens to really get my of like a full grade for, because I feel like each time I listened to this album, it invoked different feelings. Whether it was disgust, whether it was all for the level of musicality throughout, whether it was an astonishment to the really well crafted lyrics that can dance around and still give these poignant points that are macabre and really out there sometimes, and I dig that. With only one really, I'll say, glaring misstep inside the second half, this album was paced really well too. Produced top of the line as well. This one gets a strong B plus from me.
Yep, I'm right there with you. B plus as well.
Yeah.
Um, Fine sample of the '70s singer-songwriter era.
Yeah, and I also feel like at the start of this, again, so many listens and so many different feelings, but as a whole, you go in and you get to a point in this album where I got to a point in this album where I was like, "Ooh, this is some out there shit," but you really walk away from this album in a much better mindset, in a happier or more elevated mindset than you did going in, and that's a strength of it as well.
Agreed. And another strength of it for me is the fact that they were able to use some really solid mainstream sounds for a reason. This stuff made hits because it's good.
Yeah,
Solid musicianship used to some wild stories, but it just showed the chops of the musicians of this era who I love diving into. We haven't gotten to dive into any of them in a while, so glad we got to. What's your favorite song on the album?
whew, man, it's in between 2, it really is, but I'm gonna have to go. Oh my gosh, nighttime and the switch, the switching.
Really?
Yeah, man, that's my. It was either that or lawyers, guns, and money, and it was a hard fought battle between the two. Um, I dig them both, but yeah, I'm gonna go nighttime.
I gotta go with Excitable Boy. I hope nobody questions my sanity after that choice, but
Heard that.
it's I promise it's not that deep. I just really appreciate the contrast of it all. Very unique song, nothing quite like it.
Yeah, man.
Now, we're gonna do another Rock Hall inductee, but on a whole different side of the coin. We're gonna be switching the vibe completely. So, Corey, please tell us what we'll be doing next for our Rock Hall dive.
We're gonna switch lanes. But I think you might be pleasantly surprised of the comparison here and
Okay.
inside of the singer-songwriter esque and really getting down to some things that were definitely in its own time period. So now that I've done my long intro, we're gonna do the 2000 album from Outkast, Stankonia.
Yep. Wow. Definitely a beloved album. I know that for sure. One I know the hits from, but not the whole album. So I am looking forward to diving into it. And it's been a while since we've done a hip hop album, too. So
Yeah, man.
I feel
Yeah,
like
man.
this was as good a time as any to dive into those waters again.
Yeah, and we'll touch on it. Well, maybe we'll touch on it some next week, but an, a definite watch for anyone that enjoys hip hop or just enjoys a bunch of good artists paying homage. The Outcast part of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was really well done.
Yes. Yes. Most definitely. But yep, you can keep posted with updates on that in the links below on our social media. And of course, subscribe where you're listening, leave us a nice rating and review. But until then, we are going to stay so fresh and so clean so we can hopefully not upset Miss Jackson too much on our next episode.